Hello, everyone. Welcome to Voice of English. This is the place where you can learn English by listening and practicing every day. Each day, we share simple lessons and helpful tips to help you speak English better and with confidence. So get ready to listen, learn, and speak English naturally.
And today I want to share with you my personal journey of learning English. This is not just a story, but also a guide filled with my simple ways that you too can apply to your own English learning journey. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, relax, and listen carefully. Because what I am going to share with you today comes straight from my heart and my own experience. When I first started learning English, I was a complete beginner. The language sounded so different from my native tongue. The sounds, the rhythm, the expressions. Everything seemed so foreign to me. I remember sitting in my room with a small dictionary and a few basic grammar books, trying to make sense of the strange words and structures. In the beginning, it was overwhelming. I struggled with pronunciation. I stumbled with vocabulary, and I was afraid of making mistakes. But deep inside, I had a strong desire to learn, to be able to express myself in English, and to connect with the world. This strong desire became my motivation, my fuel that kept me going, even when it was hard. One of the first simple ways that helped me was making English a part of my daily life. I started to surround myself with English as much as I could. Every morning, I would listen to English songs while brushing my teeth. I didn't understand all the words at first, but the melody and the repeated phrases started to become familiar. I would sing along, even if my pronunciation wasn't perfect. Singing was a fun way to practice speaking, and it helped me get used to the sounds of English. As my interest grew, I discovered English movies and TV shows. I started with simple shows for kids. Because they used easy vocabulary and clear pronunciation, I watched them with subtitles in my own language first, and then I switched to English subtitles. This helped me connect the spoken words with their written form. Gradually, I started understanding more and more without needing the subtitles. To practice listening, I would also play English podcasts while walking or cooking. At first, I could only catch a few words here and there. But I kept listening. My brain slowly adjusted to the speed and flow of native speakers. The more I listened, the better I got at understanding. Listening practice became a habit, something I did every single day without fail. Speaking was one of the most challenging parts for me. I felt shy and nervous about speaking English, afraid that people would laugh at my mistakes. But I realized that without practice, I would never improve. So I started speaking to myself. Every day, I would describe what I was doing in English. For example, if I was making breakfast, I would say aloud, "I am making eggs. I am cutting vegetables. I am pouring juice." This simple self-talk exercise helped me practice vocabulary, sentence structure, and pronunciation in a low-pressure environment. Later, I found language exchange partners online. We would talk for 30 minutes in English and 30 minutes in their language. These conversations were not perfect, but they were real. I learned to express my thoughts, even if my grammar wasn't perfect. I made mistakes, but I learned from them. my confidence started to grow as I realized that communication was more important than perfection. Writing was another practice that became very helpful. I kept a daily journal in English. Every evening, I wrote a few sentences about my day. I wrote about what I did, how I felt, what I planned to do the next day. Writing helped me organize my thoughts and practice grammar and vocabulary. Over time, my writing became more fluent, and I could express myself more clearly. Reading was also a big part of my learning routine. I started with children's books and simple stories. The easy language and clear sentences made it easier for me to understand. When I came across new words, I wrote them down in a notebook. I created my own vocabulary list with example sentences. For example, if I learned the word delicious, I would write, "The cake is delicious. The pizza is delicious." This repetition helped me remember new words and use them correctly in different contexts. To make my learning more effective, I created small practice exercises for myself. One of my favorite exercises was shadowing. I would listen to a short audio clip and repeat everything immediately after the speaker, trying to match their pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. This exercise improved my speaking skills and made my pronunciation more natural. Another useful exercise was storytelling. I would choose a simple story, or even invent my own, and tell it aloud in English. For example, I might say, "Yesterday I went to the park. The sun was shining, and the birds were singing. I saw children playing, and people walking their dogs." Storytelling helped me practice past tense, descriptive language, and sentence fluency. Over time, I started to notice a big change. My vocabulary was growing, my listening comprehension was improving, and I felt more comfortable speaking. But the most important thing was that I was enjoying the process. I learned to see mistakes as opportunities to learn, not as failures. Every mistake was a lesson, and every small success was a reason to celebrate. One very effective habit I developed was thinking in English. Instead of translating my thoughts from my native language to English, I started to form my thoughts directly in English. This was not easy at first, but I practiced by thinking about simple things in my daily life. For example, while cooking, I would think, "I need to chop the onions. The water is boiling. I will add the pasta now." This simple habit trained my brain to switch to English naturally. Another practice that helped me was visualization. I would imagine situations and practice conversations in my mind. For example, I imagined going to a restaurant and ordering food. I would think, "Good evening. I would like a table for one, please. Can I see the menu? I would like to order the grilled chicken, please." By practicing these imaginary conversations, I prepared myself for real-life situations. As I continued my learning journey, I discovered the importance of pronunciation practice. English pronunciation can be tricky because some sounds don't exist in my native language. I used online pronunciation guides and watched videos that explained how to move my mouth and tongue to produce the correct sounds. I practiced minimal pairs like ship and sheep, or bit and beat, to train my ears and mouth. For example, I practiced sentences like, I see a sheep on the ship. The bit is small, but the beat is loud. These practice sentences helped me focus on the small differences in sounds and improve my pronunciation accuracy. Another simple but powerful method I used was reading aloud. Every day, I read articles, short stories, or dialogues aloud. This practice improved my reading fluency, pronunciation, and speaking confidence. Sometimes, I recorded myself and listened to the recordings to identify areas for improvement. Listening to my own voice helped me become more aware of my pronunciation and speaking patterns. One important realization I had during my English learning journey was that consistency is far more valuable than intensity. In the past, I used to study for long hours once a week, thinking that this would help me progress faster. But I soon discovered that short, consistent practice every day was much more effective. Even if I only studied for 15 or 20 minutes a day, that regular exposure to English helped me build a habit and kept my brain constantly engaged with the language. Slowly, English became a natural part of my daily life, rather than a separate task I had to do. I also started to pay attention to my pronunciation in a more detailed way. I learned about stress, intonation, and rhythm in English sentences. English is a stress-timed language, which means that certain words in a sentence are stressed more than others. For example, in the sentence, I want to go to the store. The words want and store are stressed, while the other words are spoken more quickly and lightly. I practice this by repeating sentences and trying to match the natural rhythm of native speakers. This practice made my spoken English sound more natural and easier to understand. At this stage, I faced a common problem that many learners experience: the plateau. After making steady progress for a while, I felt like I was no longer improving. My listening, speaking, reading, and writing were okay, but I wasn't getting better as quickly as before. This was frustrating, but I reminded myself that learning a language is like climbing a mountain. Sometimes the climb is steep, and sometimes it feels flat. The important thing is to keep moving forward. During this time, I decided to challenge myself with new materials. I started reading articles and books that were slightly above my current level. I watched documentaries and news programs that used more advanced vocabulary and complex sentence structures. Although it was difficult at first, these challenges pushed me to grow and helped me break through the plateau. I also experimented with different types of practice exercises. One exercise that worked well for me was summarizing. After watching a video or reading an article, I would try to summarize the main points in my own words, either by writing them down or speaking them aloud. This helped me check my understanding and practice expressing ideas in English. For example, if I watched a short documentary about climate change, I would say to myself, the documentary explains how human activities like burning fossil fuels are causing global temperatures to rise. It also discusses the impact of climate change on wildlife and weather patterns. By summarizing, I was able to reinforce my understanding of the material and practice using new vocabulary in context. Another useful technique I adopted was repetition. I would listen to or read the same material multiple times. With each repetition, I noticed that I understood a little more, remembered new words better, and felt more comfortable with the content. This repeated exposure made difficult materials become easier over time. For instance, I listened to a TED Talk on a topic that interested me. The first time, I barely understood 50%. But after listening 3 or 4 times, I understood almost everything. Repetition became one of my most powerful learning tools. During this journey, I realized that learning English was not only about studying grammar and vocabulary, but also about understanding the culture behind the language. Language and culture are deeply connected. To truly understand English, I needed to learn about the customs, traditions, and ways of thinking of English-speaking people. I started watching interviews, talk shows, and cultural documentaries. I read about holidays, social norms, and daily life in English-speaking countries. This cultural knowledge helped me understand idioms, jokes, and expressions that didn't always make sense literally. For example, when someone says, "It's raining cats and dogs," it doesn't mean animals are falling from the sky. It simply means that it's raining very heavily. Understanding these cultural aspects made my learning more meaningful and enjoyable. I also faced moments of doubt and frustration. There were days when I felt like giving up, thinking that I would never be able to speak English fluently. But I reminded myself why I started this journey. I had a dream of traveling, making international friends, watching movies without subtitles, and opening new doors of opportunity. Holding on to this dream gave me the strength to keep going. I learned to be patient with myself, to celebrate small victories, and to view each mistake as a step forward, to make my speaking more natural. I practiced dialogues and role plays. I imagined common situations and practiced how I would respond. For example, I practiced ordering food at a restaurant. "Good evening. I would like a table for two, please." "May I see the menu?" "I'll have the grilled salmon, and my friend will have the steak." I practiced checking into a hotel. "Good afternoon. I have a reservation under the name Mia. Can I check in now? What time is breakfast served?" These role plays helped me prepare for real-life conversations and gave me confidence when I actually encountered these situations. Another exercise I found helpful was describing pictures or scenes. I would look at a photograph and describe everything I saw in English. For example, looking at a photo of a beach, I would say, "The beach is crowded with people. Some are swimming in the ocean, while others are sunbathing on the sand. The sky is clear and blue, and there are a few sailboats in the distance." This exercise improved my descriptive vocabulary and speaking fluency. One day, I decided to challenge myself even more by joining an English book club online. We read a book together and discussed it every week. This experience was incredibly valuable because it exposed me to new vocabulary, different perspectives, and real conversations with other learners and native speakers. During the discussions, I had to express my opinions, agree or disagree politely, and explain my thoughts in detail. For example, after reading a chapter, I might say, I think the main character made a poor decision because he didn't consider the consequences. However, I understand his situation because he was under a lot of pressure. These discussions pushed me to think critically and express complex ideas in English. I also started practicing paraphrasing, which means expressing the same idea using different words. For example, instead of saying, "The movie was very interesting," I would say, "The film captured my attention from beginning to end." This exercise expanded my vocabulary and helped me sound more natural and fluent. As my skills improved, I became more comfortable engaging in conversations with native speakers. I learned to listen actively, which means paying full attention to the speaker, making eye contact, nodding, and responding appropriately. If I didn't understand something, I learned polite ways to ask for clarification, such as, "Could you please repeat that?" Or, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you explain it again?" These strategies helped me maintain smooth and respectful conversations even when I encountered difficulties. To improve my writing, I practiced different types of writing tasks. I wrote emails, short essays, and even tried writing short stories. For example, I wrote an essay about my favorite holiday. My favorite holiday is New Year's Eve. I enjoy celebrating with my family and friends. We have a big dinner, play games, and watch fireworks at midnight. It is a time to reflect on the past year and set new goals for the future. Writing regularly helped me organize my ideas, practice grammar structures, and learn how to express myself clearly in written English. One practice that greatly improved my grammar was sentence transformation exercises. I took simple sentences and changed them into different forms. For example, starting with, "She is reading a book." I practiced turning it into the past tense. "She was reading a book." Then into the future tense. "She will be reading a book." Into the negative form. "She is not reading a book." Into a question. "Is she reading a book?" This exercise helped me become more flexible with sentence structures and grammar usage. As I continued practicing, I also paid more attention to my listening comprehension. I wanted to understand different accents, speeds, and ways of speaking. I realized that English is spoken in many different ways across the world. For example, the British accent, the American accent, the Australian accent, and even accents of non-native speakers. All have their unique characteristics. At first, I struggled to understand these differences, but I saw it as an exciting challenge. I began to listen to podcasts, interviews, and speeches from people of various countries. This exposure helped me get used to different pronunciations, idioms, and speaking styles. I would play a segment, listen carefully, and write down new phrases or expressions. Then I would try to use these new expressions in my own conversations. One technique that helped my listening skills was prediction. Before listening to an audio clip or watching a video, I would try to guess what it might be about based on the title or a brief description. This prepared my brain to focus on the topic. As I listened, I actively predicted what the speaker might say next. This made me more engaged and improved my ability to follow conversations, even when I didn't understand every single word. I also developed a habit of noting down useful phrases and expressions that I heard in conversations. For instance, when I heard someone say, "I'm running late," I wrote it down. Later, I practiced using it in sentences like, "I'm running late for work," or "I'm running late for my appointment." This method helped me build a collection of natural, commonly used phrases that made my English sound more fluent and native-like. In addition to listening and speaking, I worked on expanding my vocabulary actively. Every day, I set a small goal of learning 5 to 10 new words or expressions. I didn't just memorize the words, I made sure to use them in sentences, write short paragraphs with them, and include them in my speaking practice. For example, if I learned the word enthusiastic, I would write sentences like, "She is very enthusiastic about learning English," and "I am enthusiastic about my new job." By actively using new vocabulary, I ensured that I didn't forget it easily. One fun activity that helped me practice new vocabulary was word association games. I would take a new word and connect it with related words or concepts. For instance, with the word journey, I would associate travel, adventure, destination, and exploration. This mental web of connections helped me remember words more effectively and made learning more enjoyable. Another important aspect of my learning was understanding phrasal verbs and idioms, which are widely used in English. Phrasal verbs like give up, look after, turn on, and put off often confused me at first because their meanings were not always literal. I practiced these by writing example sentences and creating mini dialogues. For example, for give up, I would write, "I will not give up on my dreams," and "He gave up smoking last year." Practicing phrasal verbs regularly made my speaking more natural and allowed me to understand native speakers better. Similarly, idioms added color to my language. Expressions like break the ice, hit the nail on the head, and under the weather were fascinating to learn. I practiced using them in context. For example, at the party, I tried to break the ice by telling a funny story. Or, "I couldn't attend the meeting because I was feeling under the weather." Learning idioms helped me sound more fluent and allowed me to appreciate the richness of the English language. Sometimes I practiced by recording my own conversations. I pretended to have dialogues with myself, recorded them, and then listened to the recordings to identify mistakes or areas where I could improve my pronunciation, grammar, or vocabulary. For example, I might record myself pretending to make a phone call. "Hello, this is Mia speaking. I'm calling to confirm my appointment for tomorrow. Yes, at 3 p.m. Thank you very much. Goodbye." Listening to my own voice helped me become more self-aware and confident in my speaking ability. As my confidence grew, I sought out more real-life opportunities to use English. I joined online forums, participated in discussion groups, and even played online games where I could interact with other players in English. These real conversations exposed me to spontaneous, natural language that was different from textbook English. I learned how people actually speak, including slang, informal expressions, and even humor. To test my progress, I sometimes challenged myself with listening dictation exercises. I would listen to a short audio clip, pause it frequently, and try to write down exactly what I heard. This exercise forced me to focus on every word, sound, and detail. After writing it down, I would compare my transcription with the original text and correct any mistakes. This practice significantly improved my listening accuracy and attention to detail. I also explored learning through storytelling and narratives. Stories are a powerful way to learn language because they engage both the mind and emotions. I listened to English audiobooks, short stories, and podcasts with compelling narratives. As I listened, I tried to visualize the scenes in my mind, which helped me remember the vocabulary and context better. After listening, I would retell the story in my own words, which allowed me to practice both comprehension and speaking skills. One day, I decided to write my own short stories in English. This activity was both creative and educational. For example, I wrote a simple story about a young girl who moves to a new city. Anna moved to a new city last summer. At first, she felt lonely and scared because she didn't know anyone. But soon, she made new friends at school and joined the local sports club. She discovered that the city had many beautiful parks and interesting museums. Over time, Anna started to love her new home and was happy to be there. Writing stories like this helped me practice narrative tenses, descriptive language, and coherence. I found that reviewing my mistakes was one of the most effective ways to learn. Every time I made a mistake, whether in speaking, writing, or listening, I wrote it down in a notebook along with the correction. For example, if I mistakenly said, "He go to work every day," I would write the correct sentence, "He goes to work every day." This personal mistake notebook became a valuable resource that I reviewed regularly. Over time, I noticed that I stopped repeating the same mistakes. Another useful practice was to simulate real-life scenarios in my mind and practice appropriate language for those situations. For example, I imagined going to a doctor's appointment. "Good morning, doctor. I've been having a headache for the past few days. It started on Monday and hasn't gone away. I also feel a bit dizzy. Could you please check my condition?" Practicing these role-play scenarios prepared me for real conversations and built my confidence. In addition to speaking, I paid attention to my reading comprehension. I read articles, blogs, and news stories regularly. I used active reading strategies such as underlining new vocabulary, writing summaries, and asking myself questions about the content. For example, after reading an article about environmental pollution, I asked myself, what is the main problem discussed in the article? What are the causes of pollution? What solutions are suggested? This type of active engagement helped me understand and retain the information better. One day, I challenged myself with an advanced exercise, debate practice. I chose a topic like, "Should schools ban homework?" and wrote arguments for both sides. On one side, I wrote, "Homework helps students practice what they learn and develop responsibility." On the other side, I wrote, "Too much homework can cause stress and reduce family time." This exercise helped me develop critical thinking, organize my ideas, and express my opinions clearly in English. I also practiced pronunciation drills focused on difficult sounds. For example, the TH sound in words like think, this, and those was challenging for me. I practiced by repeating sentences such as, this is the thing that I thought about, or those three thinkers thought thoroughly. Repeating these drills helped me master tricky sounds and improve my clarity. At this stage of my journey, I realized that my mindset played a huge role in my progress. I adopted a growth mindset, believing that mistakes were natural and that I could always improve with practice. I replaced negative thoughts like, I can't do this, with positive affirmations like, I'm improving every day. This shift in mindset kept me motivated and made learning enjoyable. As I kept going, I also became more intentional about shadowing exercises. Shadowing is a method where you listen to native speakers and immediately repeat what they say, trying to copy their pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm exactly. At first, this was difficult because I couldn't always keep up. But I started with short, slow dialogues from language learning podcasts. I would play a sentence, pause it, repeat it, and then try to say it together with the speaker. For example, if the speaker said, I'm going to the grocery store this afternoon, I would repeat it exactly with the same speed and tone. This exercise trained my mouth, ears, and brain to work together. Over time, shadowing helped me sound more natural and improved both my speaking and listening skills simultaneously. I also experimented with what is called chunking. Instead of learning single words, I focused on learning chunks of language, phrases or collocations that naturally go together. For example, instead of just learning the word decision, I learned phrases like make a decision, a tough decision, an important decision. Learning language in chunks allowed me to speak more fluently because I could pull out entire phrases rather than constructing sentences word by word. When I practiced speaking, these chunks naturally flowed from my mouth. I might say, it was a tough decision, but I finally made up my mind. This approach made my speaking sound smoother and more native-like. During my reading practice, I discovered that English newspapers and online articles provided excellent material. I often read articles from websites like BBC News or CNN, paying close attention to how sentences were structured. When I came across an interesting sentence, I wrote it down and tried to create new sentences following the same pattern. For instance, if I read, the government announced new measures to reduce air pollution, I would practice similar sentences like, the school announced new rules for student safety, or the company introduced new policies to improve employee satisfaction. This practice allowed me to internalize grammar patterns and expand my ability to create similar structures on my own. Another activity that helped me a lot was self-questioning. After reading or listening to something, I would ask myself simple questions about the content. For example, after watching a video about healthy eating, I might ask myself, what foods are considered healthy? Why is it important to eat vegetables? What are some unhealthy habits people should avoid? By answering these questions aloud, I practiced forming full sentences, improved my comprehension, and trained my brain to think in English. As my vocabulary grew, I found it useful to organize new words into categories or mind maps. For example, I created a mind map around the theme travel. In the center, I wrote travel, and around it, I added related words: passport, luggage, flight, hotel, reservation, destination, sightseeing. For each word, I practiced making sentences. I forgot my passport at home. We made a hotel reservation online. Our flight was delayed by 2 hours. This visual organization helped me see connections between words and made vocabulary learning more efficient. I also paid attention to developing my intonation and expression when speaking. English speakers often change their pitch to express emotions or emphasize certain words. For example, when surprised, they might say, "Really? That's amazing," with a rising tone. When being serious, the tone may drop. I practiced mimicking these tones by recording myself reading dialogues with emotion. For example, I read, "Wow, you got the job? Congratulations. That's fantastic news." This practice made my speaking more engaging and natural. A big part of my learning journey was practicing thinking in English. At first, I often thought in my native language and then translated into English. This process slowed me down and sometimes led to mistakes. To overcome this, I started practicing thinking in simple English sentences throughout the day. For example, while cooking, I would think, "I'm chopping the onions. Now I'll add salt. The soup smells delicious." While walking outside, I might think, "The sun is shining. The weather is nice today. I see children playing in the park." This habit trained my brain to process thoughts directly in English, making speaking more spontaneous and fluent. To improve my fluency further, I practiced storytelling from my own life. Every evening, I would pick one event from my day and describe it in English. For example, today I went to the grocery store. I bought some apples, oranges, and a loaf of bread. The cashier was very friendly and smiled at me. On my way home, I saw a beautiful sunset. This daily practice strengthened my ability to describe everyday events and prepared me for casual conversations. Another fun practice was listening to songs in English. I would choose a song I liked, listen carefully, and try to write down the lyrics. Then I checked my transcription against the correct lyrics and practiced singing along. This improved my listening, vocabulary, and pronunciation. For example, listening to a song like "Imagine" by John Lennon, I would focus on words like imagine, peace, and sharing, and practice sentences like "Imagine a world without war," or "We should live in peace and harmony." As I reached higher levels, I started to explore academic and professional English to prepare myself for job interviews and international work opportunities. I practiced common interview questions such as, "Can you tell me about yourself?" or "What are your strengths and weaknesses?" I would prepare answers like, "I am a highly motivated person with excellent communication skills. I enjoy working in a team and always strive to learn new things." Practicing these types of formal responses gave me confidence to handle professional situations. One particularly useful exercise was comparing synonyms and understanding subtle differences between words. For example, I studied the difference between say and tell. I practiced sentences like, he said he was tired, versus, he told me he was tired. By focusing on these small differences, I avoided common mistakes and became more precise in my word choices. To keep my motivation high, I set small, achievable goals for myself. One week, I focused on mastering 10 new phrasal verbs. Another week, I concentrated on improving my pronunciation of R and L sounds, which can be tricky for many learners. For example, I practiced sentences like, Larry rarely rides a red roller coaster, or the lake looks lovely at sunset. These focused weekly goals kept my learning organized and measurable. I also explored learning through humor. I watched English stand-up comedy and sitcoms like Friends. Comedy exposed me to everyday slang, fast speech, and cultural jokes. I paused and replayed jokes to understand the wordplay. For example, in one episode, a character might say something sarcastic, and I would analyze why it was funny. This not only improved my comprehension, but also helped me become more comfortable with the humor and playfulness of the language. During this stage, I paid more attention to discourse markers, words and phrases that help connect ideas in speech and writing. Words like however, in addition, for example, on the other hand, and, as a result, made my speaking and writing more organized. For instance, I practiced sentences like, I enjoy studying languages. However, it can be challenging to stay motivated every day. And I practice listening to podcasts. In addition, I read articles every morning. Using discourse markers allowed me to express my ideas clearly and logically. Sometimes, I created quizzes for myself to test my grammar knowledge. I would write multiple choice questions like, which sentence is correct? A, she don't like pizza. B, she doesn't like pizza. C, she isn't like pizza. The correct answer, of course, is B. These quizzes kept me actively engaged and made grammar practice more interactive and fun. Another useful habit I developed was writing diary entries in English. Every night, I wrote about my day, my feelings, and my goals. For example, today I felt happy because I finished reading my first English novel. I'm proud of my progress and motivated to keep learning. Writing diaries allowed me to practice expressing emotions and personal experiences, which are essential for real conversations. I also practiced describing processes and giving instructions in English. For example, I practiced explaining how to make tea. First, boil water in a kettle. Then, place a tea bag in a cup. Pour the hot water into the cup and let it steep for a few minutes. Finally, remove the tea bag and add sugar or milk if desired. Describing simple procedures improved my ability to give clear instructions and strengthened my speaking fluency. Finally, one of the most powerful techniques I used was recording my progress over time. Every few months, I recorded short videos of myself speaking about different topics. Watching older videos showed me how much I had improved in fluency, pronunciation, and confidence. This motivated me to keep going and reminded me that steady practice produces real results. With time, I also became curious about English culture, history, and traditions, because language is deeply connected to culture. I started watching documentaries about life in English-speaking countries. For example, I watched programs about British royal traditions, American holidays like Thanksgivings, and Australian wildlife. While watching, I took notes of new vocabulary and expressions. For example, I learned phrases like a royal decree, turkey feast, and down under, the last one being a nickname for Australia. Understanding cultural references made me feel more connected to the language and more confident when interacting with native speakers. Another practice I incorporated into my routine was debating current events in English with myself. I would choose a news topic, such as climate change, and prepare arguments for and against certain policies. For example, on one hand, stricter environmental laws help reduce pollution. On the other hand, they can be expensive for businesses. Debating helped me learn persuasive language, organize my thoughts clearly, and expand my vocabulary on complex topics. At this stage, I wanted to push myself further. By learning how to describe abstract ideas and emotions in English, this required a deeper understanding of adjectives, adverbs, and figurative language. I practiced sentences like, I feel overwhelmed by my responsibilities, or she was absolutely thrilled to receive the award. I also explored metaphors and similes, practicing expressions such as, life is like a roller coaster, or her voice was as smooth as silk. These expressions enriched my speaking and writing, making them more vivid and expressive. During my free time, I experimented with creative writing. I wrote short fictional stories, poems, and even imaginary conversations. For example, I might write a dialogue between two friends planning a trip. Hey Sarah, have you packed your suitcase yet? Not yet, Mia. I still need to buy some sunscreen and a new swimsuit. Don't forget your passport. We don't want any trouble at the airport. Of course, I'm so excited for our vacation. Writing such dialogues helped me practice natural conversational patterns and introduced me to casual language that is often used in everyday life. Sometimes, I also practiced summarizing what I had read or listened to. For instance, after reading a news article about space exploration, I would summarize it. NASA is planning a new mission to the moon next year. The mission will test new technology and prepare astronauts for future trips to Mars. Summarizing not only checked my comprehension, but also improved my ability to convey information concisely. As I advanced, I focused more on fluency rather than perfection. I accepted that occasional mistakes were part of the process. When I didn't know a word, I tried to explain it using simpler words or paraphrase. For example, if I forgot the word dentist, I might say, the doctor who fixes teeth. This strategy kept the conversation going and reduced my fear of making mistakes. I also found that practicing pronunciation with minimal pairs was very effective. Minimal pairs are words that differ by only one sound, such as ship and sheep, or bit and beat. I would repeat pairs of words aloud, focusing on clearly distinguishing the sounds. For example, I saw a ship versus I saw a sheep. This practice improved my listening sensitivity and made my pronunciation more accurate. Another useful technique was practicing role-play scenarios for real-life situations. For example, I would pretend I was at a hotel check-in counter. Good afternoon. Welcome to Grand Plaza Hotel. How may I help you? Hi, I have a reservation under the name Mia Johnson. Let me check. Yes, Ms. Johnson. You've booked a deluxe room for 3 nights. May I see your ID, please? Here it is. Thank you. Thank you. Here's your room key. Enjoy your stay. Such role plays prepared me for real interactions and boosted my confidence in using English in practical settings. I also explored practicing intonation and stress patterns in English. English is a stress-timed language, meaning that some syllables are stressed more than others. For example, in the sentence, I went to the market yesterday, the stress naturally falls on went, market, and yesterday. Practicing these patterns made my speech sound more natural. I recorded myself reading sentences with correct intonation and listened back to identify areas for improvement. At this point, I was ready to challenge myself with academic writing. I started practicing writing short essays on topics like the advantages and disadvantages of online education. I organized my writing with clear introductions, body paragraphs, and conclusions. For example, online education has become increasingly popular due to its flexibility and accessibility. Students can learn from anywhere and at any time. However, it also has disadvantages, such as limited social interaction and potential distractions at home. In conclusion, while online education offers convenience, traditional classrooms still provide important face-to-face communication skills. Writing essays helped me develop structured thinking, coherent arguments, and formal language skills that are useful in academic and professional settings. I also began practicing note-taking while listening to lectures or webinars in English. Instead of writing full sentences, I used keywords and short phrases. For example, during a webinar on time management, I might write, set priorities, avoid multitasking, take breaks, daily planning. Later, I would review my notes and practice expanding them into full sentences. This technique trained my listening comprehension and helped me capture main ideas quickly. Additionally, I developed the habit of practicing English while doing other activities. While cooking, I would describe the steps aloud. Now I'm chopping the onions. I'll fry them in a little oil until they turn golden brown. Next, I'll add the tomatoes and spices. This habit made English a natural part of my daily routine. Sometimes, I practiced pronunciation with tongue twisters. These fun exercises challenged my mouth and tongue muscles. For example, she sells seashells by the seashore, or Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Repeating these quickly helped improve my articulation and fluency. To improve my listening to fast speech, I practiced watching videos at normal or even slightly faster speeds. I learned to focus on keywords and main ideas, instead of trying to catch every single word. This skill was especially helpful in conversations with native speakers, where speech can be quick and full of informal expressions. I also learned to pay attention to register and formality. Depending on the situation, English can be formal or informal. For example, in a job interview, I might say, I am confident that my skills will contribute positively to your team. In a casual conversation with a friend, I might say, I'm sure I can do a good job. Understanding when to use formal or informal language helped me communicate appropriately in different contexts. Finally, I always reminded myself that consistency is the key to success. Even on busy days, I made sure to spend at least 15 to 30 minutes practicing English. Whether it was listening to a podcast while commuting, reading an article during lunch, or writing a short paragraph before bed. These small efforts added up over time. Looking back on my entire English learning journey, I realized that the most important lesson I learned was patience. Language learning is not a race. It is a long, continuous journey that requires dedication, consistency, and a positive attitude. There were days when I felt frustrated, especially when I couldn't express my thoughts perfectly. But I learned to celebrate small victories, understanding a new word, completing a full conversation without switching to my native language, or simply enjoying an English movie without subtitles. These small successes built my confidence day by day. I discovered that immersion is not only about living in an English-speaking country. You can create your own English world wherever you are by surrounding yourself with English materials, practicing actively, and making English part of your daily life. Today, I am proud of my ability to communicate, express ideas, and connect with people from all over the world through this beautiful language. My journey proves that anyone can learn English, regardless of age or background, if they approach it with the right mindset, daily practice, and a love for learning. So, to all of you watching this video, I want to say, believe in yourself. Your English journey is unique, and every bit of effort you put in will lead you closer to fluency. Keep practicing, stay curious, and never give up. Thank you for joining me on my story today, and I hope my experience inspires you to continue your own English learning adventure.